and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. On our agenda now is the meeting minutes for April 17th, 2023. Is there any discussion, clarification, changes that needs to be noted by the commissioners?
I have one correction, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mr. Davis.
Page 3, 7th paragraph, the word versus is just misspelled. Should be V-E-R-S-U-S.
Any other members? Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, if no other corrections are to be made, I'll make a motion we accept the minutes as presented with the correction.
Thank you, Ms. Townsend. The motion is to approve the minutes. Roll call, please.
Mr. Moyer.
Aye.
Mr. LaRochelle.
Aye.
Ms. Rose.
Aye.
Mr. Tiller.
Aye.
Dr. Schmidt.
Aye.
Ms. Butler. Aye. Ms. Townsend.
Aye.
Mr. Davis.
Aye.
Mr. Bennett.
Who, me? Oh, aye. Thank you. Motion passes. Next on our agenda is a citizen comment period, and we have nobody who has elected to give us any comments. Then we'll proceed on to any presentations of note. Ms. Ledoux.
None tonight, sir.
Thank you very much. And unfinished business, I have none. And I guess we'll move right on to the public hearings. Dr. Schmidt.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight we have one public hearing before us. Each has been properly advertised for tonight's consideration. Let me take a moment to review the procedures that we will use for tonight's hearing. Each public hearing will be considered separately. Staff will give a brief overview of the hearing that is before us. The sponsor of the case will be given an opportunity to make a presentation. Commissioners will be given an opportunity to ask questions of the sponsors or staff for clarification purposes. I will then open the citizens' comment portion of the public hearing and receive your comments. Sign-up sheets are located on the desk by the front doors of the administration building. I ask the following. You come to the podium, state your name and address for the record, address your comments to the commission, limit your comments to 3 minutes. When the timer sounds, please conclude your remarks. Please note that the commission members will not answer your questions during the citizens' comment period, but will certainly take those questions and comments into consideration during the deliberation period of the public hearing. We have before us tonight application ZM-01-23.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Good evening, everyone. Can everybody see this up on there? Okay. It's easier to explain this application visually, so that's why we wanted to pull this up. So Mr. Martin, who's here this evening, has requested the rezoning from C1 conservation to R1 single-family residential of 2 areas of tax parcel 18-4D, totaling approximately 9.5 acres. The intent per his submitted proffer statement is to create a maximum of 2 building sites on the parcel to construct 2 residential units in the future. Tax parcel 18-4D is here. This is one section of it, and the other section of the parcel is over here. So it's basically divided into 2 sections and surrounds the dispatch station subdivision in the middle. So one of the areas he's requesting for rezoning is here off Sparks Terrace, and the other area is here off of Dispatch Road. It's got a driveway off Dispatch Road. So each area is on a different section of the parcel, if that makes sense. The future land use map designates this area of the county as suburban housing. The application was reviewed by all the reviewing agencies, and their comments can be found in your staff memo. Oh, sorry, I'm gonna go back to the first one. Per Public Utilities Director, both future parcels would be served by available public water that's out there. The entrance to Parcel 1, as I said, would be served from Sparks Terrace, and the entrance to Parcel 2 would be from Dispatch Road. The Environmental Director did have some suggestions for the Planning Commission to consider. Those are in your packet. One of them was to include requiring the remainder of the property that will stay zoned C1 to possibly be placed under a deed restriction to ensure that it would be preserved in perpetuity. I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Martin and his counsel, Mr. Boyd. They'd like to give a brief presentation, and we'll both be here to answer any questions.
Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Randy Boyd from Charles City, and I'm here with Mr. Martin. And to give you a little background about this property, it all sort of came to a head when Mr. Martin, after having bought the property and he knew it was zoned C1, was looking at his tax bill, and the tax bill indicated that he was being taxed as though it was, some of it was residential. So he went to the commissioner's office and asked, why is that? And he was told by the lady there, well, there are two really good building sites on the property, and they're the two areas that we're asking to be rezoned. So basically, he doesn't mind paying the residential-based taxes, but he would like to be able to use that property for residential use. We're okay with New Kent raising the tax rate, but we'd like the use to be consistent. With the regards to parcel or area 1, when this property was originally proposed for development, that was shown on the plans at the time, 2006, as 2 buildable lots. And it was approved as 2 buildable lots. But for whatever reason, when the property was ultimately put to record, those last 2 lots were combined with the residue, and so it all became C1. Now, what we're asking is that what was originally approved by the county as 2 lots be basically approved as a single lot. The restrictive covenants or the proffers specifically limited it to a single residential unit with supporting structures, you know, a garage or something like that. But they wanted to, Mr. Martin wants it to be able to be used for exactly the same use that the surrounding property is, although his parcel would be a little bit larger than the other parcels in the tract. There's direct access to the public road. There's, as you said, water would be supplied by the existing water system, and there would be a private septic. Almost all of this property is outside of the RPA, and none of it is a wetlands or a sensitive land. With regard to the second parcel, that's a little bit larger. It's about 7 acres. The area that it is a part of is about 27 acres or so. The larger tract is about 115 or so. And this 7 acres fronts on Dispatch Road, and there is an existing driveway that goes right to the property. I know there was some concern by the environmental department about this, but I wonder if you went down and looked, because if you went to the property, you would see the existing road. You would see that it goes to the, there's a large ridge that extends out from the north side of the property, and there's somewhere between 70 and 100 feet of elevation above the streams and the wetlands that surround it. I mean, there are a stream as you come, but there's an existing road. It's an old dam causeway that's been there for quite some time that gives service to it. So to get onto the property, you would not have to do anything, and you certainly would not have to impact RPA or wetlands or streams in any way. You should feel comfortable that the concerns that the environmental department had have no bearing on this particular aspect. It would be restricted to a single residential use. It would have the same water and sewer systems that the other parcel would have, and it would be consistent with the existing uses in the property, although, as you can see, the lot would be a little, well, substantially larger than most of the lots in that area. So what we're asking for is that property that is physically usable for residential use and is taxed as residential use be allowed to be used as residential use. And interestingly, the proffers include almost the exact same proffers that the subdivision included in terms of how things can be built and what the structure will look like and so forth. We just took those from the proffers for the existing development. So if you have any questions that I could answer or Mr. Martin, we'd be pleased to do so.
Madam Chair, one question. The access to the, I guess, Area 1, as far as the conservation portion, is that going to be identified as a right-of-way? I understand, in my reading, you'll be accessed off I guess, from the cul-de-sac there?
Let's see if this is Area 1. It fronts on the state road, which ends with this cul-de-sac. And there's a road that just goes right into the property there. But
okay.
It's directly, there's no right-of-way because it fronts right on the public road.
And once if this lot is rezoned and the access, is going to be a right-of-way to the C1 portion?
Well, there's no need or desire to separate the C1 from the residential use. Quite frankly, the property was bought for hunting, and he has a grandson, and if he builds there, he wants to keep the other property, not to separate it from the area where he would build.
Okay, all right. So it was my misunderstanding. Then I thought it was going to be it's going to be the zone or just the rezoning, and that'll be a parcel just rezoned residential.
That's correct.
Okay, and the other area 2, technically, it's all part of the same property. Is that correct?
Technically, quite obviously, it isn't. It doesn't touch. I mean, it is a separate parcel physically, but it is carried as a single parcel. And is it the same application with Area 2? Is the same as just going to be rezoned residential, or is it going to be? It is the same in the sense that it is not anticipated or desired to separate the other 20 acres from the 7 acres that would be rezoned.
Now, I guess just the question is, can we have two buildings on one parcel?
It's kind of a complicated answer. So legally by state code, split zoning is not illegal. You can have one parcel with several zonings. We have a lot of those in the county. But because they're looking at doing 2 building lots, you can only have one principal structure per lot. So at least one of these parcels will have to be subdivided off before it can get a building permit. Does that make sense? Because it's technically one big parcel.
Right. So then the reality is, there would be a rezoning at a later date if there's a decision
There'd be a subdivision at a later date.
Subdivision. If the decision is made to put 2 homes on this parcel.
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
For the adjacent property owners that purchased homes immediately adjacent to these two parcels, how did this land show when their homes were sold to them? Did it show up as conservation? And did they buy their property with the understanding that these parcels would remain in conservation?
I don't know whether the conservation was ever discussed with them one way or the other. It is physically at the rear of all of those, of the existing development. And I suppose it would depend on whether the people were talking about the property before or after the decision was made to include this Area 1 with the C1 or with the development. But I'm not aware there was ever any discussion of that one way or the other.
I mean, the reason I raised my question is it may have been a selling point to folks, let's say up by the drawings up there, lot 30 or lot 29, if it was pitched that this area adjacent to your lot is conservation, that might have been a selling point to them.
There was no restrictive covenants from the seller. It was zoned C1, but there was nothing that the seller did in terms of selling that property separately by including any sort of easements for view or anything like that for the subdivision property. So I doubt that that was the case.
Another question, Madam Chair. That parcel which looked to be, I guess originally two cul-de-sac lots.
Right.
They are completely separate from the subdivision and were never counted as open space.
No, it was completely separate. They were never a part of the subdivision. I think the truth of the matter, when I went and walked the property, was there's a lot of gravel there, and they used those lots, parts of the lots, as a borrow pit to make their roads. I suspect that's the reason that they did it. But at the time that the land was developed, there was a substantial digging of gravel on one part of this 2.5 acres.
Madam Chair, I've got a couple of questions. Mr. Duke, if you could help me understand a little bit of history. Do you know about what time period this property, the entire tract of the two parcels, was rezoned into C1? Do you have any idea?
You might know better than I do the history. The C1 zoning is showing up back into the 90s.
90s? Okay.
Yeah, the original dispatch station subdivision was done, I think, in the early 90s, and it became part of that. First it was M1, and then when the subdivision came before the Planning Commission in the 90s, they said, no, you can't really ever put anything there because the railroad tracks are there, and it's all wetlands and RPA, and then it got zoned to C1. So from the research that we were able to find regarding it, looking back in the zoning books, it's been C1 since at least the 90s.
And as to if this property is subdivided even to define one lot on the two-tract parcel, okay?
Right.
It'll have to go through a subdivision. So in essence, you're creating two lots, correct?
Yes.
If you subdivide one part out of the entire parcel, there's two lots created.
The only way that would be allowed, though, and this is tricky, is that if the rezoning gets approved, because according to the code, you cannot subdivide C1 property.
Correct.
You can only subdivide, well, in this case, the R1.
Okay. So it's possible that the property owner could leave the individual tracts in the individual two tracts comprising the one piece of property as individual lots if the property got rezoned. For instance, the 130 acres that comprise, that Area 1 resides in, could be
Okay.
one lot. And then over towards Area B, that sliver of land could be another lot if the property is rezoned, correct?
Only if the property as a whole got rezoned, the whole
Oh.
118 acres. No, the remainder of both of these areas, the intention is to keep them as C1.
And they will be taxed.
As C1, yes. Right, only the zoned portions, and he's right, they have been getting taxed as a buildable area. So that would become legit, I guess, if it was zoned R1.
So, correct my small mind.
No, it's all right, it's it's a
In order
weird one.
for the area known as Area 1 to
Okay.
be considered a residential lot, that had to be subdivided out from the parent lot and also be rezoned to R1,
Yes,
okay? Now let's turn to Area B, or 2.
okay,
In order for that area of 3 or whatever number of acres, 8 or 9 acres,
Mm-hmm.
to be created as a lot, separate from the rest of the property, it has to be rezoned and created as a subdivision lot.
yes. So
Okay.
his request would be for a total of 3 lots if all got approved.
Wouldn't it be 4?
No,
Because it'd be the parcel behind this one too.
no, because this here and this here would stay as tax parcel 184D.
Show that again, please.
So this area here, this big white portion that make up, this is one half of 184D, this is the other half of 184D. So these two areas would still remain C1 as tax parcel 184D.
If I
This
may
would-
continue with my question, I
Mhm, go
understand
ahead.
what you're saying.
Okay,
So how would access to the initial parcel of 184D behind Sharps Terrace be accessed?
right.
How would-
That's the question for them, right?
Okay,
If in the future, I mean, I think Mr. Martin's intent is to keep the big remainder of the parcel for hunting and such, the C1 piece. So as long as they're owned by the same person, they don't need to have an access easement. If in the future he wants to sell the remainder of that big parcel, then we'd be looking at, they'd have to grant access to it somehow with an easement.
okay.
It's strange, probably same thing over here too. I mean, a lot of it is, accessible only for hunting or whatever, but you still need to have access to the lot.
Next question is there a homeowners association associated with dispatch station?
Yes.
It would seem kind of prudent that whatever lot or residential components created at the end of cul-de-sac be members of that, since they're in the
Yeah.
same territory.
That was a question that I did ask Brendan, our county attorney.
Yeah.
Legally, we couldn't force him to join their HOA, but if that was something that they wanted to work out between them, they could.
Are there any shared amenities in that group, in dispatch station?
Well, the roads are all public, so I don't
Yeah.
think they pay any HOA fees. I honestly don't know if there's any parks or anything out there. Do you know? Yeah,
Is-
because it's an older subdivision before those were part of our requirements.
there-
All right.
Madam-
Yeah. Right, right.
Madam Chair, the one thing I was wondering about with the HOA is if the HOA has an architectural review and that they would have to approve what was going to be built there. And
My
I would
unders-
think by now, even at this stage, I doubt if the HOA would be turned over to the residents yet. It's probably that builder is in charge of the HOA. So that would be, I would think it would be prudent probably to join the HOA and go by their guidelines. And if that's true, that's would probably be a pretty good neighbor to them.
Yeah.
Mr. Moore, did you
you're-
see his proffers, though? He is proffering some of the structure items that is currently in that HOA.
But we would have to still go through, if they have an architectural review board, they still have to go through that. And normally the situation in that, to say.
Yeah, I'm not sure if they do, but you're right. And the majority of those lots in Section 2 are still owned by Dispatch Station or Sherm Homes. They're not developed yet, so you're right about that.
If I may continue, what's the condition of the impoundment structure on the Area 2? Anybody inspected that?
I don't know.
You're speaking
Yeah.
about the road, the way
The
it
dam,
crosses?
Yeah,
The dam.
It,
because my observation last week is the impoundment structure, the dam itself is overgrown with trees, which is not it's not a item that you like to see on dams because the root systems end up dying and sacrifices the structural integrity of the dam. Doesn't look like the road's been used any time in the recent history. And I'm just wondering, to gain accessibility to Area 2 across that structure may be hazarded as best, especially if you're considering you bring in concrete trucks, wood, cinder block, blah, 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 for home construction. So I'm wondering how the structural integrity is. And then if it needs to be improved, then there's most likely going to be more improvements and more jeopardy to the environmental resource management and resource protection areas in that area.
Question, if I may ask though, is the dam on the opposite side of the street?
No. There's two dams in that locale. One's on the north or east side of Dispatch, and there's another one on the south and west side of Dispatch. Just north of, as displayed on this map here, just north of Area 2, or on the common line of Area 2 with the sort of surrounding property.
And the existing road is along that impoundment?
It seems to be along that impoundment, along the dam.
from my visual inspection of it, the dam has been there for quite some time. There's no evidence of even with some of the heavy rains we've had, that the existing water flow system is not adequate to it. There's no evidence of any erosion. It hadn't been used in a long time. If you go up the hill, you can see the road itself, but the dam top is in good condition. I don't know of any reason why it shouldn't be adequate for a concrete truck or otherwise.
Okay.
But I would like to say that there is absolutely no desire to interfere or to in any way degrade the C1 that will be left hopefully after this rezoning. That has never been a question, and to the extent that some additional proffers were appropriate to give you peace of mind about that, Mr. Martin would be glad to do it. I mean, he just wants these two residential areas, but the rest of it to remain as C1.
Madam Chair, question for you here. As for the 4D, I know we had some conversation about this. The accessing to the back to the sea, wouldn't it be able to have the applicant on the deed at the time just say that there is an easement that always goes with the property in case at some point in time he no longer owns the property, there will still be an access to the C1 behind that piece of parcel? He could just do, 15 feet along the edge to access the property.
That would be sufficient. Yep.
So maybe he could make that, would you make that a proffer, or would you write that into the proffer sheets?
You could. Yeah. It would be put on the subdivision plat, though, too. Could require that. But yeah, that might be appropriate as a proffer. You have to come up with the right language for it.
Any other questions, commissioners? Okay, then I will open the citizens' comment portion of the public hearing.
Nobody signed up.
No one has signed up for a comment, so Mr. Chairman, I turn this back over to you.
Thank you. Since there's been a little bit of discussion, and I'll continue with discussion before accepting any motion. If there's any desire for continued discussion.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
so on the recommendations from the Environmental Planning Office, they recommended denial of Area 2, rezoning of Area 2 specifically because of concerns out of environmental impact on wetlands, FEMA floodplains, resource protection areas, et cetera, referring to access to Area 2. It sounds like the applicant questions that or disagrees with that. So I don't know if we should split these two into two separate, can we split it into two separate things, or it's either going to stand or fall as one item?
Very good question, Mr. LaRochelle. In discussion with staff and the county attorney, we can separate into two motions. One motion either approving or denying Area A, or 1, and then another motion approving or denying Area B, or 2.
Mr. Chairman, on this other part, section 2, could he also proffer that he would not use that access road? He would stay a certain amount of footage away from that road, seeing how it's a sizable amount of acreage. The actual house could be closer into the subdivision rather than to the railroad tracks.
Ms. Townsend, I have some knowledge of that property. I do not want to suggest a proffer. I would suggest that the applicant make any proffer changes. In other words, if I had to put a proffer out, I wouldn't make that kind of proffer for that proffer. I would suggest any proffer changes be made by the applicant. If he wants to make that kind of proffer, let him speak for it.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
question about it. Let me make sure I completely understand. Area 2. In this picture, Area 2 is a triangle that looks like it has not just 3 sides, but 3 90-degree almost angles. And in this, I see that it is not a triangle. And that's where the road is coming in, as you see there.
This is the same sheet that y'all have in your packet, so I'm not quite sure.
I understand. Right. I'm just saying on this sheet, this shaded area looks like it's a pointed angle. Okay. There. See.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
it's a
as we
smaller
blow
scale.
it up,
Mm-hmm.
there is not a lot of room to put another entrance on
Right.
Dispatch Road.
Here's the access dispatch right
You only
here.
got, I'm going to say, 20 feet.
How many feet is that?
Because that big area is staying in the C1, correct?
Correct.
Okay, we're only talking about that triangle, and the only part that abuts Dispatch Road
Right
is the
here.
corner up there. That's not a corner.
It's kind of
So
a corner.
where else would a road go?
Right.
That's it. Or if that's good or bad, I don't know, but I'm sorry. I did not physically go out and look at this. I should have. I'm sorry.
Any other discussion? Ms. Townsend? Dr. Schmidt?
No.
Ms. Rose?
Mr. Chairman, I guess I would question the strength at which the environmental department made their comments, and the fact that they said that the rezoning in and of itself is not does not constitute approval of a subdivision plat. So you could find yourself in a situation where we can rezone it and then the subdivision plat is denied, correct? Right. And then that would they'd be back to square one.
That's correct. It would just be a split zone property. Yeah, I think what he was trying to say is even if there's no guarantee that the lot's going to be buildable, you know, should they get out there and do the subdivision surveying and all that, just by approving the rezoning. That was his comment.
Just one other question. Somebody else is on.
Go
There
ahead.
you go. The Area 2, that has also been taxed as residential? So that has been determined already by Commissioner of Revenue that it is a buildable lot? Okay. So it's not if they go back and find out it's not?
I think he'd have a strong argument to appeal it and get that changed
Yeah.
if it didn't
Now,
go
how
through.
much else of the C1 was also taxed as residential?
The other piece that he's looking to get rezoned.
Just the other piece?
Right.
Only those two pieces?
Yes. Yep.
The rest is C1? How did they change some? Sorry.
Mr. Davis?
Yeah, it's my, how can, I guess if it's one parcel, it should only be one buildable lot for the tax purposes, would have been my understanding. I don't know why that's been done that way or can be done that way. Typically, it's an acre set off as a buildable lot, no matter how big your parcel is.
Yeah.
And so how do you come up with two buildable lots on one parcel, even though they are physically separated? I understand that, and I know that's it's ambiguous or vague. Where is this 1 acre called out on the for the purposes of taxation?
Yeah.
I don't know, and I'm not the one that answered, I guess, but it strikes me as odd that if there are 2 buildable lots for tax purposes on this parcel, should only be one, at least based on my understanding. So
That's a very good question. You might be able to speak to that. You got to come up here, Jason.
My name's Jason Martin, 30-year resident of New Kent, and the actual property was, I went to the treasurer's office and had them pull up and asked her where exactly are the buildable parcels on the property, which I had a pretty good idea because I had been out and walked all the property and seen it all. So I was thinking, you know, great places to have a residence. And she brought the map out and I physically circled both spots, you know, where they were buildable properties for which I'm being taxed for. So, and as far as the parcel 2, there's actually an easement going to the back of it that's separate from the front piece that's identified on the drawings. There's a back easement to that piece of property, and parcel 1 we were looking at, I'd be willing to add a deeded right-of-way down that left-hand side to access the conservation in the future.
You got to point to the access that you're talking about up here?
Well, it's actually on the tail end back here in the back of this neighborhood. I have a right-of-way through that neighborhood's cul-de-sac, and then it goes along the railroad tracks onto the back of that property as well.
Do you go around the back of all those?
Yes, sir. I go through the second section of Dispatch Station in order to access the back of the property as well.
And that's
For
an,
clarity, can you, I want to make sure that we all understand what we're talking about here.
Yeah. We'd have to zoom back out to the big parcel. Oh, Kenny, help. Sorry. Just open this again? Yeah, please. I clicked too many times.
And on section 2, I've spoken with the neighbors, and they'd be willing to let me bring my equipment or whatever through their property to access that. That way, it would eliminate going across that dam with any heavy equipment. So, if that helps any.
Cal, if you just roll
I
over
know.
the PowerPoint icon, I think it popped up there.
Yeah, he's got the mouse. He's got control for a second. Do you want me to try pulling it up from here? Okay. Oh. Whoa. Okay. Oh, come on. It's not opening for some reason. Sorry, guys. This one? Okay. Yeah, I don't know why it's not opening. Restore? Oh. Was that you? That was you. You got it. Okay. I know. It wraps
Well-
around the
well,
bottom
they-
and goes up.
So off the cul-de-sac behind those lots and up.
Yes.
If I might, just to ask you a question about the taxation, what they did was they had 1 acre.
Here, come to the mic.
Could you go to the microphone, please? Or,
I'm sorry.
thank you.
They had 1 acre at $58,000 and 7 acres at $4,700, so that you ended up with a $33,400 for the second residential site, and then the balance of the property was, the C1 was at $1,200 an acre. So I think you're correct that they supposedly only had 1 house site, but they taxed 7 other acres at a much higher value
Well,
because of that.
yeah, and I do see what you're speaking to, and the 7 acres is identified as woodland, so I guess that may mean it has some type of different tax rate for the value of the woodland. And
Well,
the rest is identified.
All of
as
the
RPA.
C1 is woodlands, but in any event, that's apparently was a rationale.
While Mr. Bond tries to restore the image, any more discussion? Yes, Ms. Townsend. I saw you going for it. Go ahead.
I have some issues with this. I feel like that Mr. Martin bought this property with the understanding of what the county was already saying, that there were 2 lots there. And I feel like it's kind of like now we've sold the Cadillac, but we want the engine back now. I feel like it's something wrong that's going on, that you had this already, paying taxes already for residential 2 lots. And then if we were to deny him based on that, well then, why did he buy the property? Tell him. Yep.
I think we're back in business, y'all. Do
Yes.
you have any more questions?
If you would, please go to area B or 2.
Okay. So it's yeah, you still can't see it. So what he's talking about is this cul-de-sac around this way. That's how he gets, that's the easement, Jason, right? Yeah, through that way.
Anything else, Ms. Townsend? Okay. Mr. Tiller, any comments, sir?
You said the water would be, it would be served by county water? Both lots?
Yes. Yep, through the
So
Woods Edge.
was one coming from Orapax Farms and the other one coming from Dispatch?
I think Michael said it was
If I may
the
add
Woods Edge
to that,
station.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Mr. Leduc. I talked to Michael today. To his recollection, Mr. Martin and he were discussing about accessibility of water to the end of Sparks Terrace, but there is no water availability along Dispatch Road at the railroad. So that lot would have to rely on Wells system. Now, there may be some plan in the future, but it's an extended future.
Okay.
Okay, but there is no water, public water along Dispatch Road at the railroad.
And I guess to add on that, if it has to be, the eventuality is it's a subdivision. The subdivision in and of itself would not require a county water system tie-in, would it? So
It wouldn't require it, no.
It would require it?
It
Would not?
wouldn't.
Okay.
Wouldn't.
even though access to water for Area 1 would be, obviously make better sense,
Right.
obviously to tie into the county system, but the Area 2, you'd have to get a right-of-way from the subdivision. So, I guess if you chose to do so, you wouldn't have to.
It would be the more expensive route, yeah.
Right.
If you wanted to hook up to the system.
So it's going to be a well.
Yeah.
Mr. Chiller, anything else?
No, I guess not. I'll do a little more reading before the next meeting.
Okay. Ms. Townsend, any final comments? Dr. Schmidt?
No.
Mr. Rose?
No.
Mr. Davis?
None other than, I guess we'll see it again if there is any moves to actually build something. So it's not like it's our last chance to discuss this. So.
Thank you. Mr. Moyer?
Kelly, it's one of those questions, and I've asked it before. How many of these do we have out there?
How many what?
How many of these problems do we have out there? And is there a committee or something we could do to make sure this isn't a problem? You know, we appreciate your tax money, but
Yeah.
they probably shouldn't have been taxed that for a long time. And we'd still be coming back asking for the rezoning, but they may get it because of what we've done in the past. So it's be wise for us to get these off the record, and the dual zonings that we have. That I know we brought up, that it came up with the food line at the circle.
Yeah.
The same kind of issue, and so we'd like to. It'd be great if we could clean these things up. That's for sure.
I'll
One way or
take
the
the
other.
first half of your question as rhetorical because I'm not sure how many more are out there, but as people bring them forward, like Mr. Martin, we are, said, go ahead, take your shot, and let's try to fix it.
Mr. LaRochelle?
No, sir.
Ms. Butler?
No.
One more question, Kelly. You can say C for this. The Area A1 is subdividable into two parcels from area standpoint, is it not? As far as area standpoint. There's 2 acres, I believe, 2 plus 2, 59 acres, so there could be 2 125-acre parcels there, like there was on the original plan.
Theoretically, yes, if it was zoned R1.
R1, that
Yes.
section. Okay, all right.
Yep, he's proffering just one.
I understand. My comments are, I see a possibility of the continuation of subdivision if it's rezoned in Area 1. Unfortunately, I do not see it plausible to consider Area 2 as a subdividable lot because there's just too much hair or fuzz on this one with regards to floodplains, wetlands, accessibility, just on and on and on. So, is there a desire to separate these two into each a consideration? Or if not, we can vote on it as a single consideration. If there is desire to do it as in each, I would like just a roll call vote on that, please.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
change my mind.
Okay.
With Area 1 and Area 2, like Mr. Bennett just said, Area 2 being the not triangle, that looks like a triangle, wouldn't it be better to go ahead and split it as 2 different ones, and that way, before you go through that process of rezoning it, if it's not buildable, why do it? I guess.
It's all a matter of process, I guess. As it is now, he couldn't come in and split it because it is currently part of the C1 property, and that does not allow subdivisions. So the only way he could create Area 2 is to first get it rezoned with the legal description that's attached in here, and then come back and record the subdivision plat. What Brendan was saying about your first part of the question, he made the application for both areas, but if the Planning Commission wishes to make a recommendation for one and not the other, that's okay. Does that answer your question? And that recommendation would then come to you all at the board. We'd have to do some rewriting of the paperwork, but
I guess I was
Yeah.
thinking cost-wise. Maybe I shouldn't have said that, but that's why I'm kind of the way I'm looking at
yeah, no, that would have been up to the applicant to
Right.
which order they wanted to do
it.
it
But I
in.
think, personally, I think splitting it would be the better way to go right now.
Either way, would
Okay.
we need to see if the applicant was agreeable to that?
I guess I won't.
Is it clarification to her question?
It's sort of clarification, Tom.
Okay, I'll hold on the decision of Ms. Townsend if you want to make a clarification, fine.
Does that mean, Kelly, they gotta pay another $2,100 if they come back to apply for the second one?
That would be up to him. If this is technically part of this application. So if your recommendation is to deny Area 2, for example, that recommendation goes to the board. If they agree to do that,
True, yeah, what am I saying?
then the applicant would have a year before they could reapply. So if Area 1 did get rezoned, that's great. He could proceed with what he wants to do there, but he would have to come back and make another separate application.
Okay, don't move, please.
All right.
So if this commission should decide and the board also elects to allow the rezoning of Area 1 to R1, is it possible that the applicant could come in with 2 lots in the subdivision of that parcel or that tract?
Not with the proffers as they are written.
Okay. So it would require amended proffers to allow up to 2
Correct.
in any or both parcels?
Yes.
Up to 2.
Yep.
Okay.
And the proffer amendment is the same process as a rezoning, so it'd have to go back before y'all again.
Thank you. All right, could you restate your question, Ms. Townsend, please? Oh, I remember.
Well, I mean, I'm just thinking this, he's already paid money,
Yes,
and he's already paid for something that wasn't correct, or with the assumption that he had 2 lots, but now he really doesn't have 2 lots. And, I mean, if anything, I would want to have to pay for one if I did. I mean, he might be that he doesn't want to build a house. If he can't get his house and he can't get his daughter's house, he might not want to build the 2 lots.
I will allow the applicant to either agree with the voting separately or collectively, if whatever the applicant should like to do.
Now, would that give me the ability?
Please go to the mic.
Thank you.
Would that hinder my ability to come back on Lot 2 in the future if I decided that I wanted to maybe have a study done of the dam or what have you to make sure that it would be significant enough?
I'm going to speak for the county here. Let's take 2 scenarios.
Yes, sir.
Okay. The real question is whether we to consider both of these areas as one consideration or split them into 2. If it passes this board, then it goes to the Board of Supervisors with a favorable recommendation.
Yes, sir.
As one.
Okay.
Or we could pass it as individuals with favorable recommendations, favorable for A or favorable for Area B. If either one of A or B gets an unfavorable recommendation, the board is still allowed to make their own decision of to make it a favorable consideration or unfavorable.
Yes, sir. I
If
understand.
either one is unfavorable, then that item would have to delay a year before it could be reapplied.
Yes, sir.
Okay? If the initial application for both are denied, you would have to wait a year for both to, before you can make another application for both,
Yes, sir.
okay?
Yes, sir.
So your consideration is,
My suggestion is you agree to this
Wait.
separation so that
before you speak, Mr.
One-
Moyer would like to
one-
add.
One more question. There's another scenario. He drops his application for number 2. And that, just talking, if you would drop that part of it, then that's not a year involved. Then you go do some studies, check that dam, and the dam's a really good question.
Yes,
We
sir.
got Woodhaven that is worried about their property because of their dam.
Yes, sir.
It may not be as big, of course, but the departments in the state think they're all huge dams.
Yes, sir.
So if you drop the one and then you do all your studies, looks good, then come back with that. That's an option too, correct? Kelly.
That's correct. The only thing I want to caution us is not to get so many variants of options that we lose track of what our plan is here, okay?
Let's go with the separation.
Divide and conquer, okay?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, can I
Yes,
ask one, hopefully one final question? Is there, would you still be going for the rezoning on parcel 2? If,
In the future?
well, if it turns out from studies from the environmental review process.
Yes, ma'am.
That it's not truly a buildable lot.
Yes, ma'am.
And then you essentially could petition for the proper taxation under C1. Is that correct?
Yeah, if it's found that it's not feasible, then I would not.
Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
all right.
okay, all right. Mr. LaRoche, do you have a question, sir?
No, my only point was, if you break parcel 2 out of the discussion tonight
Yes, sir.
and ask us to vote on parcel 1 only,
Yes, sir.
do your studies, come back, he'd have to file a fee again, pay another fee to bring parcel 2 back, right? So I just wanted to be clear on that.
As I understand it, when you separate it, you'll have your vote yea or nay, and if you're yea on one and nay on the other, both of those go to the Board of Supervisors,
That is correct, sir.
and they may agree or disagree, depending.
That is correct.
So,
But on the other side of it's dropped, and there's only one vote on the first parcel. We have no recommendation, I guess, on the second one, if you continue to take the second one to the Board of Supervisors. Okay,
Would Ms. Ledoux, would that even be presented if there's been no vote by the Planning Commission to the board? I don't think so.
we do split.
Now I'm confused.
If-
I would have to confer with Brendan, but my understanding is if he's choosing to amend his application, it may have to come back as a whole different application when it comes to the board. I don't know if it would have to come back to y'all or not, but I'd have to ask
The amendment
him
would consist of
if
dropping
he's
the one-
completely dropping the
Oh,
area
okay,
two as a
understand.
consideration.
Okay. I would recommend
I
that you
think-
proceed with both.
Yes.
There's only one vote there. Yes or no?
But the motion can be separated. You can move to approve area 1, but not area 2. That could be made as the motion. You don't have to take 2 votes. And then that vote as a whole would get passed to the board.
Okay. All right, we got your decision. Now, let's make sure the commission is understanding. I would like a show of hands or a roll call vote of those who are in favor of separating the 2 areas for consideration. Would you do a roll call, Ms. Berry?
Sure.
Or let's simplify it. Those who would like to see it separate, please say aye. Those opposed? Okay, it'll pass. Now, I'll accept a motion for, okay, that was just to whether we're going to separate it. We are separating.
Okay, but
That's a
what Kelly was saying.
non-binding.
Non-binding vote.
Two separate motions.
Okay.
Two separate motions.
Okay, well, that's not what she said.
It needs to be one motion.
What we
One motion
Not to
with-
include.
to include provisions and recommendations for the two different.
Yes.
Okay,
But one
You should
motion-
make the motion.
Okay.
thank you.
And if you understand it, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Okay.
yes.
That would be the same motion to include area one, but not to include area two.
I'm worried about this. Yes, Ms. Townsend?
You made the adoption, like the PC 0523 may need to be just specified that you're voting strictly on the one
That-
site.
Or favorable
It's-
for area one, but unfavorable for area two.
And I will amend the resolution after the meeting, after the
Let me
motion.
suggest a way. We make a motion, and there'll be, the first vote will be for area one.
We can't separate. So if you do the
If you do the motion and then say a favorable recommendation for area one and non-favorable for area two, then it's one vote.
Okay, but how about if it's favorable for, okay. Then how do you approach,
Then if you agree with that, you say A. If you don't, you say nay.
okay, but that,
you agree with one, but not the other.
yeah, that's right.
But
That
you
was
need
the
to-
motion.
Yeah, you gotta be all in, one way or the other.
But how about if you agree to yay for both?
You vote nay for the.
Well, we've already had a non-binding vote that we want them separated.
Yeah.
Meaning one.
Chances are.
Okay. Well, if there's a motion, that's good.
Let's see how the motion goes. Let's have a motion and then see how the vote goes. Sure. We may need.
Are
a vote.
are we including the, in the motion, the amendments that are suggested by the environmental committee and the easement that was offered? He said he would give up easement to the C1 area through area one, right? The 15-foot easement along the boundary, so we need to make sure we include those
Absolutely.
nuggets in the motion.
Yeah. Now that we muddied it up. Okay. Thank you, sir. Please.
In order to address, protect, and promote public convenience, necessity, general welfare, and good zoning practices in the county, I move to adopt resolution number PC 0523 to forward up the application ZM 0123 to the New Kent County Board of Supervisors with a favorable recommendation with the amendments of a easement to the controversial, it's very close, but the conservatory area and on area one, and to deny the area two for further discussion, unfavorable recommendation for area two.
In the reason for it, denial?
In our environmental persons questions. You know, that's definitely what it is. It's, you know.
All right, two, could you
Okay, let's-
defer to?
I'm sorry?
Could you defer to section two?
Deferring our, yeah.
Vote
Okay,
on-
let's
vote
go
on
there
one
again.
And then defer two for a later date.
I'm not deferring to.
That'd be two votes, then. That'd be two votes.
Okay.
So we need one vote to be encompassing of both actions.
That motion captured item 2 from the, it didn't mention item 1, which is deed restriction on,
I'm not quite there right yet, okay?
An easement on,
I'm listening, but I'm not clear. So you understand that the one motion has to carry both activities, okay? It could be for Area 1, not for Area 2. Has to include all the
right.
provisions
right,
for Area
right.
1 and why we are not.
And why
approving
we're
area-
not, okay.
Why we're not for Area 2.
Okay, I think I'll,
Okay,
do that.
you made the motion, I got it.
You
And
got
then I
it?
think Mr. La Rochelle,
Thank you.
you can make an amendment to his motion to also include language regarding the deed restriction.
right, the easement, yes.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to amend the motion to include item 1 related to section A or area 1 of the application to include deed restrictions on area 1,
Okay,
as specified in the environmental director's email.
okay, we have an amended motion that we need to vote on before we vote on the primary motion.
No,
You
if you amend the motion, you can still vote on it as one.
you sure?
Wait, that, I'm sorry, that, what was just said, it was, the amendment was about the environmental concerns on area 1 was stated. It's environmental concerns on area 2.
No, he's stating for the easement. One of the items of reason for caution expressed by Mr.
Right.
Aragi was having accessibility to the remnants behind Area 1.
Oh, okay, well, that's
Okay.
the easement.
And that's what
Okay.
Mr. La Rochelle was addressing.
That's one of
Yes.
these things.
The second item,
The deed restriction on the remainder of the
The deed-
C1.
One on the list.
yeah, number 1 on the list. In their second item,
The first one I spoke about was item 2 on the list.
Okay.
Then John included that in his motion,
Right.
didn't mention item 1. So I
Okay.
want to make sure we have
Okay.
item 1 and 2 in there for section, or area 1.
Okay.
Okay. So you don't need to vote on the amended motion. Okay. All right. You want to restate it one more time?
No.
Yeah.
Okay,
She ought to restate the whole thing.
Right. That's right.
I will do my best. Okay. So there was a motion from Mr. Moyer to approve PCO 523 to forward a favorable recommendation for Area 1 with the easement to the C1 property through Area 1 and to deny the Area 2 rezoning because of the environmental issues. The amendment I have is to amend the motion to include the deed restriction on the remainder of the C1 property.
Everybody understand?
Do we want to use the word deny or unfavorable?
Unfavorable. Yep,
That will rule. All right.
okay.
Ms. Berry, roll call vote, please.
We will get
Remember,
it straight.
it is a complex statement that you're voting on. Thank you. Go ahead.
Mr. Moyer,
Aye.
Ms. Rose,
Aye.
Ms. Butler. Aye. Dr. Schmidt,
Aye.
Ms. Townsend,
Aye.
Mr. La Rochelle,
Aye.
Mr. Davis,
Aye.
Mr. Tiller,
Abstain.
Mr. Bennett.
Aye. Thank you, Mr. Martin and representatives. The vote will go forward with a favorable recommendation for Area 1 with some restrictions or added conditions and unfavorable for Area 2. All right, it will be heard in the June meeting, the first June meeting of the Board of Supervisors. Okay? Thank you. Thank you, Commissioners. We're going, I think it's going to, let's just go ahead and muddle right on through the rest of it. Any new business, Mr. Ledoux?
No, sir.
Thank you very much. I have no chairman's report, and I don't see Amy unless Mr. Tiller knows anything of Plan RVA. Please say no. Thank you very much. Moving right along. Commissioners report. I'll go round table. Mr. La Rochelle, anything?
So last year, I think it was, I did a presentation about electricity, distributed generation, et cetera. So just as an update, just as one of the examples I used in my presentation is going to be retired, and over the next basically couple of weeks, in our area will be almost 1,700 megawatts of electric generation that is being permanently retired. So this is the trusty, reliable, push-a-button, dispatchable load that it's colder than we thought, run the generator high or run the generator low, we don't need as much power, it's gone. And that's almost the equivalent of our 2 nuclear units at North Anna, for example. They're about 1,900 megawatts, and we're taking that off the grid right now. So this is like it or not, but this is kind of the direction that we're on. And Dominion released, this is all public information, they've also released a plan, they're pumping the brakes on a couple of other things, but this is happening. And so, you know, when you think of that cold spell we had at Christmas, and now picture that with 1,700 less megawatts of energy available to keep us warm and everything else. So.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. LaRochelle. Ms. Butler?
No.
Thank you. Mr. Toller? Thank you. Ms. Townsend?
Yes. Okay, this is one of my things that I've been wanting to get kind of straight. Is the AFDs that we have. The AFDs I would like to see re-looked at, maybe some new blood looking at it. But I think we need to be a little more stricter on what we're doing with the AFDs, as to say, if you are doing timber, that we are producing timber for consumable use. So you kind of know that way. But with the other applicants, there are some applicants that are smaller portions, like the 5 acres and whatever, that we need to state that they need to require showing us proof of what is it that you are producing on the piece of property for the tax dollar that you get. Now, I have had some problems with some of the smaller structures, like with the horses. Oh, well, you know, I've got horses on my field. Okay, so that's good. Are they pleasure horses, or are they business horses? Are you boarding? I need to see something more with a little teeth, and I would like to see if we could get somebody to sort of take a look at it and say that we are going now to require, if you're farming a piece of property, you've got to show us fertilizer fees, soil samples, or, you know, anything showing us that there was a purpose for this property and then what it was being used for. I'm just concerned that we're losing a lot of revenue, a whole lot of revenue, and it's really sort of like anybody can kind of get into it if they have the right amount of acreage. It doesn't matter what they do with it. So if that's the board's pleasure, I would really like to see that we kind of rewrite it a little bit and require maybe just a little bit more proof of what you were doing with the parcels.
And I guess I'm sorry, just to ask, I guess the concern mainly with the forestry use versus?
It's more agriculture.
Because if you're a farmer, I mean, if you get their USDA reports that, and I've used that as justification.
Well, see, a lot of those don't
parcels.
come, but when you're a farmer and you're doing soybeans, I mean, I can usually look at a field, go out and say, okay, you know, you're not just putting 100 acres of soybeans in for nothing. Okay, we can kind of figure that, but again, I want some stuff, some proof. You know, okay, I bought nitrogen, I bought fertilizer, I had Roundup. This, it's the smaller portions that are sort of slipping through the cracks here of, such say, pasture land. Some of the pasture land, they say, well, I use this for hay, but I don't see receipts or anything coming in for pasture lands or for horses. Just because you have 5 horses doesn't mean that the 5 horses are producing something. It's not like you're boarding or like you're teaching a riding school or something. It's just you have 5 horses and you want to get a discount.
Yeah. Good point, Ms. Townsend. If you remember Mr. Cotney, who sat on this commission about 4 or maybe 5 years ago with another individual, I cannot remember who it was, but they put together basically some guidelines on the evaluation of AFDs. Ms. LeDuc, when those AFD, well, we're only having one, I think, come up this year. But for those like Mr. Davis and I don't know who else, maybe Mr. La Rochelle, they probably haven't seen that document that Mr. Cotney put together. I know I haven't, and I can provide it, but it was regarding evaluation of AFDs for their suitability of inclusion into the AFD program.
Well, I know that according to the state, we couldn't change a whole lot, but yes, we can ask. And if we ask on the application, please provide so-and-so and proof of what it is that you're producing. I think it's just a little word that needs to be put in our application when it goes out. Because I would like to have some clarification saying,
Yes.
okay, you just can't have 5 horses and think it's an AFD.
Can I ask a quick question? Sure. Are there other counties that are seeing similar problems and trying to create better benchmarks?
Well, if I am correct, there's not a lot of counties out that offer the AFDs. Am I correct on that? I mean, New Kent is fortunate enough to have this special program, but some of it, like Charles City, doesn't have anything. They don't provide anything.
The whole county being AFD.
Loudon, well, yeah. I think Loudon County was the only one that had an AFD program.
Oh, really? Like Eau Claire or that?
It's horse country up there.
Okay, yeah, that's true. Yeah.
But they raise racing horses mostly up there.
Yeah, so, okay.
In the conversation that I've had is what's livestock and what's a recreational animal. For instance, if you stable a horse that is pure riding pleasure, it's a recreational animal. It's not livestock used for breeding and selling or for harvesting for food source. You know.
Yes,
So,
and that's the whole point, right?
yeah. So thank you, Mr.
It just needs to,
Tweak.
I'd say on the application, we just need to sort of tweak that a little bit as for the requirements, saying you shall show what you are producing.
The
for this.
demonstration is upon the applicant.
Yes.
Yes.
And I guess too, now is this taken away from the AFD? Is their responsibility to do this?
No.
The board?
No,
Yeah.
we make a recommendation to go to the AFD, and they'll look at it, and they vote on it,
And then they send it
and
to
then
us.
they send it back up to us.
Right. I just want to make sure that we're not doing the work that the AFD board should be doing, or
You make sure it's not duplicate work.
yeah.
Well, currently, I don't think they're not reviewing the application process on the AFDs. They're just doing the AFDs as they come along.
Just for renewals.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Dr. Schmidt.
No, sir.
Thank you. Ms. Rose.
Nothing?
Thank you. Mr. Davis.
Yes, just to report out real quickly on the steering committee update. We did meet, the full committee met April 24th, and we reviewed, I guess we're moving into the next phase. We're focusing on, still obviously focusing on land use, but also transportation issues. And the big thing is going to be the public engagement, our second public engagement, which is coming up in June. We have 3 dates lined up, and it's all the same presentation, all the same information will be put out. June 6th, Liberty Baptist Church in Lenexa, from 12 to 1:30. I don't know what day of the week, I think it was Tuesday?
The Tuesday.
Yep. Then also that evening, June 6th at New Kent Middle School, 6 to 7:30. And then June 13th, the following week at Quinton Elementary School, 6 to 7:30. Certainly encourage all commissioners to show up. Those of us on the steering committee Some of us may also be used as facilitators at the individual meetings. And so also along with that, there's another opportunity to participate in a survey. The previous survey will be opened up again, or is opened, I think, as we speak. If someone didn't take part in the first survey, they can still take part in that first survey, as well as they can take part in the second survey. But so far, last meeting, I think we had some generally good discussion with the vendors, and again, hopefully y'all will see you at the one or all three of these next to meetings, the public engagement.
Can you repeat those dates?
Sure. June 6th, 12 to 1:30 at Liberty Baptist Church. June 6th, 6 to 7:30 at New Kent Middle School. And then June 13th, Quentin Elementary School, 6 to 7:30. So the thought behind that is we wanted to, instead of just doing one location, we can try to bring the show a little bit closer to the citizens. And so we got one in the east, one in the central part of the county, and one in the western part. But it's the same information. Obviously, it may be different dynamics, I guess. Different conversations will be started at each one, but it's the same program for all three. And
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Thank you, Mr. Davis. Mr. Moyer.
No.
Thank you, Mr. Moyer. Staff reports. Ms. Kelly.
The only thing I really have to report is for next month's agenda, and that might be a segue to maybe continue a little bit of discussion about AFD. We do have one application coming before you for the June meeting. And just a reminder that it will be on Tuesday.
You took my fire.
Oh, sorry. Well, Mr. Davis took mine, so I'm just kidding.
Remember, that's Tuesday after Juneteenth. Okay? In this room at 6:30. Anything else? If not, do I have a motion? Thank you, Mr. Moyer. It is 7:52. Good night, folks.